Good evening, everyone. My name is Sarah Schroeder, and I'm a senior program librarian here at Richland Library. Thank you for joining us today for this virtual program about protecting yourself from identity theft. Nowadays, so many everyday activities are conducted online, from checking your bank balance to applying for a job, ordering groceries for delivery, to registering for a class. Many of us are sharing personal information on a daily basis. While the companies we entrust with this data spend billions of dollars a year on cybersecurity, we as individuals need to be aware of the threats to our personal information and take some necessary steps to keep it safe. There will be time for questions from the audience towards the end of the program, although you can enter them in the Q&A feature throughout the program, and we will get to as many as possible. Before I introduce our speaker, I want to remind you that we have a lot of great programs coming up, both virtual and in person. Please visit richmondlibrary.com for the full schedule of events and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube to receive notifications and updates about our programs, services, and resources. Please note, the views and opinions expressed in today's program are those of our guests and do not necessarily reflect the position of Richmond Library, as our organization does not endorse any specific agenda. Cedric Wright was born in Bronx, New York, but was raised in Aiken, South Carolina. He majored in Spanish education at South Carolina State University and went on to teach in the Orangeburg County School District. He left the teaching profession to work at the 1890 Research and Extension at his alma mater while completing his MBA and co-authoring Jumpstart, a children's book about building strong character traits. Yearning for his days in the classroom, he returned and taught for several more years at Orangeburg Calhoun Technical College in the business department and at Camden Military Academy. Currently, he works as a program assistant and outreach coordinator for the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. Please welcome Cedric Wright.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm so excited to make this presentation on today. So let me kind of shift gears a little bit, and then we will go ahead and get started. All righty. Again, I want to thank her for that warm welcome. And as she said, my name is Cedric Wright, and I am the outreach coordinator / program assistant with the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. And today we're going to talk about avoiding scams and ID theft in the digital age. And I will tie this into online as well. But before I get started, I want to go ahead and read my disclaimer. This presentation is not meant to serve as a substitute for reading the various laws discussed, seeking legal counsel, or otherwise requesting department guidance and/or interpretations on the laws it administers and enforces. This presentation merely serves as an introduction and overview. Okay, now that we have the disclaimer out of the way, let's look at our roadmap and see what we're going to talk about for today. On our roadmap for today, I'm going to give you an overview of South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs because many people don't know what we do. We're going to look at some interesting facts. We're going to talk about what identity theft is. We're going to look at identity theft signs. We're going to look at most common online scams. I'm going to give you some online safety tips, and we're going to look at ways to prevent identity theft. All right, so now that we have some of the preliminaries out of the way, let's look and see what South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs is all about. We are the protection agency for the state of South Carolina. A lot of people don't believe this, but we've been around since 1975, and we're getting ready to celebrate our 46th birthday. Our mission is to protect consumers from inequities in the marketplace. And how do we do that? We do that through advocacy. A good example of advocacy would be when you have water companies or utility companies who want to increase their rates. We step in and say, no, Cedric Wright is paying enough for his light bill. No more increases. We have mediation, which ties in with our consumer services division, which we'll learn about later on. We have enforcement, which ties in with our legal division, and education, which ties in with our public information department, as well as our identity theft unit. Our consumer services division, they have the role of receiving and mediating complaints, and this is done through an online portal. And if the Consumer Services Division receives a complaint that can't be handled, it's channeled to the proper jurisdiction. And as you can see, this department receives about 300 complaints a month, and They average about $1 million in refunds, credits, and adjustments annually back to consumers. As we look to our legal division, a lot of people don't realize this, but we actually license places like credit counsel places, physical fitness gyms. If you're going to go to a funeral home and get a prepaid services, we do that is we license those funeral homes to give that pre-need assessment or services, mortgage broken places, prepaid legal services, pawn shops. All of those businesses have to come through by us in order to have a license to operate. The identity theft unit, which is the unit that I represent, our whole goal is to educate consumers about what identity theft is, steps that they can take if identity theft will occur, and etc. And we also handle security breach notices. We ensure that if a company has a security breach in the state of South Carolina, we ensure that you as consumers know, hey, that this has happened. Our public information department is a department, they keep consumers up to date, and we do that through Facebook page. You can also take advantage of our webinar Wednesdays. We advertise all of that on our Facebook page. We have a Twitter account as well as a YouTube page. And the public information department, they too do presentations as well. Our public information department was also responsible for our new website. Now on our website, we make it really easy for consumers to file a complaint. If you're one of those businesses that I articulated about earlier, you can get a license. If you want to check to see whether a business is licensed, especially if we license them, you can check that by way of here. A lot of people don't realize this. You can report identity theft as well as scams to us. And last but not least, if you're interested in a presentation, we come to churches, sororities, fraternities, any type organization that you're part of. If you want to experience a webinar such as what you're experiencing here today, we are more than glad to come and do it, and we do it for free. So definitely take advantage of our wonderful services. Now that you know a little bit about South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, let's get to the meat as to why we're here today. But before we transition to the real meat of our presentation, I want to focus on the most common methods of identity theft. And many people don't realize this. The number one method is hacking. Number two is stealing mail. Three, requesting information via email. Four would be stealing account numbers. And last but not least, stealing wallets or a purse. Now, let's talk about what identity theft is so we can really understand our topic for today. Identity theft is when someone steals your personal information, and they obviously steal that without your permission. And when your information is stolen, they use it to commit fraud. And one of the things that they look for when they steal your information would be your PII, which is considered your personal identifiable information. That's your social security number, your driver's license number, your address, phone number, and etc. All of that is considered PII or personal identifiable information. Now, how can your information, once it's stolen, how can it be used? Your information can be used to buy, for example, to buy things using your credit card. Most people don't realize this. They can take your information and get a credit card in your name, get a phone services, electrical services, a gas account, even file your taxes on your behalf. Use your information to go to the doctor. And this is scary but true. Your information can even be used if they were to get arrested. You could get the blame because they would provide your information instead of theirs. I know that's scary, but that's true. And we have had many instances where we've had complaints about that. Let's look at some. Now, let's kind of dig into what the personal identifiable information is. We talked about this earlier, like your name, your date of birth, social security number, health insurance number, mother's maiden name. And I want to kind of part right there for a minute. Many people use their mother's maiden name as well as where they went to high school as maybe passwords for particular accounts. You want to be careful about using passwords that are identifiable. For example, many people on Facebook, they may have where they went to high school or the year that they were born, or information like your mother's maiden name, that's searchable information. So you want to be careful about using passwords that could possibly be searchable. And you can see the others that range here as well. Now, let's talk about how identity theft actually happens. The first thing that we want to look at is the fact that you, and why do I have you up here? Many times our own carelessness causes us to be victims of identity theft. A female may go to Dollar General and she leaves her pocketbook on in the car, visible on the seat. Or someone may be at church and leave their purse anywhere or just laying around. We can be sometimes our own victims because of the carelessness that we have when it comes to protecting our personal information. Now, although we're virtual and I can't actually ask everybody to pull out their wallets, it is a no-no to have your social security card in your wallet. Remember, your social security number is the key to everything about you. You want to make sure you keep your social security card in a secure place in your house. If you need it, you can retrieve it. Once it's done, then you can actually place it back in a secure place. But we at Consumer Affairs, we do not recommend you carrying around your social security card in your wallet. Another popular thing that's linked to identity theft, these are called skimmers. These are actually put on things like ATM machines, gas machines as well. When you go get gas, you want to be careful about going to any type ATM machines or gas stations. You want to deal with gas stations that are reputable. If you take the time to notice, a lot of ATM machines, they have a flat surface in the front and they don't protrude out. Those are ATMs that you want to, take advantage of. And even if you're unsure about whether a gas nozzle, or I'm not nozzle, but a gas machine or a ATM machine has a skimmer on it, you can just merely shake it, and if it moves, there's more than likely a skimmer on that particular machine. A lot of people, when it comes to junk mail, they don't discard junk mail properly, particularly junk mail that's linked to prepaid credit cards and etc. But I highly recommend, if you are going to throw away any type junk mail, particularly if it's pre-credit card offers or anything that has personal identifiable information, you want to make sure you shred those junk mail instead of just throwing it in the trash. And when it comes to a shredder, you want to use, and a lot of people don't even realize this, there are three types of shredders. There's a strip cut shredder, a cross cut shredder, and a micro cut shredder. Now, with the strip cut shredder, you can see that with those pieces of the puzzle, it's easy to put it back together. But when it comes to the cross cut shredder, as well as a micro cut shredder, it makes it very difficult for the thief to put the pieces of the puzzle back together. So if you're going to have a shredder or you're going to buy a shredder, I highly recommend that you use a cross cut shredder or a micro cut shredder. And the reason why that's important, because as you see in this, one man's trash is another man's identity. You have lots of instances where people or thieves will actually go through the dumpster or go through trash and search for things that actually has personal identifiable information on it. So that's why you want to make sure that you discard and shred personal information in the correct way. Another link to identity theft could be family. Think about it. Your family, they know where you have personal information, personal documents. So there have been many instances where family members have actually stolen from other family members in trying to have identity theft issues. Another thing you want to be careful of is using public Wi-Fi. Many people, if they go to the library, and I'm not talking about Richland County Library, but if you go to the Waffle House, or if you go to, let's say, Starbucks, you may want to tap into the Wi-Fi. But I want to say this, if you're going to use Wi-Fi, you want to be very careful about putting in personal identifiable information. I do not recommend using Wi-Fi for things like paying a bill where you actually have to take out a credit card, or you putting in your routing number or your any type of bank information or account numbers. Definitely don't use Wi-Fi for that. But if you just maybe checking the weather, or reading the state newspaper, that's okay. But just remember not to put in personal identifiable information. You have a lot of thieves who will actually put false Wi-Fi accounts out there in order to get personal information from people. So just be very cognizant about using Wi-Fi in different places. With your password, you want to be careful. You need to change your password every 60 days. And I hear somebody in my mind saying, well, Mr. Wright, I'm getting a little seasoned and I can't actually remember all of these passwords. You can actually use password managers, and those password managers will assist you with all of the passwords that you have for your different accounts. But we at Consumer Affairs, we highly recommend that you change your passwords every 60 days, and do not use the same password for all of your accounts. You want to use different passwords for each of your accounts. This next thing, which is popular, when it comes to filling out receipts, when you go to a restaurant, you want to make sure, for example, if you're going to leave a tip, let's say $3, you want to put that $3 as close to that dollar sign as possible. And when you put your total, you want to put that total as close to the dollar sign as possible. Why am I even talking about this? This is important because you have instances where someone may try to put a 1 in front of that 3 to make that tip $13. So if you, by putting it close to that dollar sign, you can hopefully prevent things like that from happening. When we talked about skimmers earlier on the gas station, you can see an example of how the skimmers look on even at the gas station. And the one on the right actually represents how a skimmer looks if it were to actually be put on that particular gas station pump. Now, when it comes to your social security number request, I know because we live in the South, people are very friendly about giving out information. But when it comes to stuff like your social security number, as a consumer, it is your job. You can ask these questions. Why do you need it? You can ask, if I give you my social security number, how will you protect it? Is there something else that you can use other than my social security number? Instead of getting all of my social security number, can you just use the last 4 digits? These are questions that you can ask when it comes to your personal identifiable information, because no one can protect your personal identifiable information better than yourselves. So just kind of keep that in mind if someone or if some office or business were to request for your social security number. Now, I know that we've talked a lot about identity theft, but let's look at some deeper signs of identity theft. The first one that we want to look at would be your bank statement. I highly urge that if you are one to only check bank statements every 30 days, I highly recommend that you avoid that as a practice. I deal with Navy Federal Credit Union. And what I do is I have alerts set up. Every time, I don't care if I go to the gas station and get a bag of potato chips for $1.25. As soon as I slide my card, I get a notification to my phone saying gas station, $1.25. And these type methods help me to be proactive about my bank account versus waiting until I get my 30-day statement and something cataclysmic could have occurred. So just kind of keep that in mind. Checking your credit report. Now, because of COVID, you can actually get a free credit report, and I'll give you the information for that as we just before we end our program for today. You can actually check your credit report free weekly up until April of next year. And there's no excuse why anyone should not be checking their credit report as often as you should. If you're missing bills, for example, if you know that you get your light bill on the 1st or the 15th and all of a sudden you don't see it, missing bills could possibly be an indication that you may be the victim of identity theft. If you're receiving calls from debt collectors, particularly if you know that it's something that you didn't even buy, or you know it's not a debt that you owe, you go to the doctor and all of a sudden your medical claim is actually denied. That could possibly be a sign of identity theft. And If you can't file your taxes because they've already been filed for you because someone stole your social security number and used that to file your taxes. And last but not least, a warrant being out for your arrest, um, which would actually tie to your personal identifiable information. So all of these are possible warning signs for identity theft. Let's look at phishing because this is something very popular that happens online. Phishing is a technique used to fraudulently obtain usernames, passwords, credit card numbers, and other sensitive information. Now, phishing typically occurs online when you're checking your emails. Let's look at an example of phishing. You see this example with Bank of America. It says, we're writing you to inform you that there have been a number of invalid login attempts to access your account. Now I want to skip down a little bit where it says, click here to begin the account verification process. Now, when we look at the anatomy of this phishing email, the first thing that we see is the fact that it says, dear online banking customer. If I am a customer of Bank of America, I expect that to say, dear Cedric Wright. So the fact that it's not personally to me is a red flag. It says here, please click here to begin the account verification process. Now, when you get these online phishing emails, there are two things that you need to look out for. The way that you know that it's fraudulent, because with these phishing type emails, there's always a situation, and if you don't act on the situation, there is a consequence. So the first situation we see within this phishing type email is the fact that it says, please click here to begin the account verification process. That's a situation. Now it says, if you fail to update your account information in the next 24 hours, you will be required to go into our branch to reestablish your account. So here again, if you don't do what they're asking you to do, there's a consequence for not following instructions. So if you were to click there, as soon as you do that, that's how most people get fooled into putting personal information. So let me say this, if there's a problem with your bank account, you should actually pick up the phone, call the number and say, this is Cedric Wright. I'm just calling to verify if there's a problem with my account. Do not fall for these phishing type letters. And someone may say, well, I would never do that, but you would not believe the number of individuals that we have that actually fall for these type letters. This is another popular type phishing one. Dear user, here again, that doesn't say dear Cedric Wright. We're having some trouble with your current billing information. We'll try again, but in the meantime, you may want to update your payment details. During the next login process, you will be required to provide some informations, grammatical error, and that's another red flag for a phishing type email, because most of these phishing type emails are individuals who are overseas or individuals who do not have a good grasp of the English language, so they make grammatical errors such as what you see right here. And here again, there's another link. It says log in now. Now, if you were to actually click that link, the first thing that it would ask you would be your credit card information. These are things that you need to look out for, even if you know you legitimately have a Netflix account or an Amazon account. If there's an issue that you think may be with your Netflix account or your Amazon account, simply call Netflix, talk to someone live, and verify whether or not there's an issue if you feel like there could be a possible problem. The next thing that we want to look at as it relates to online would be tech support scams. I'm sure many of you, while surfing online or maybe on your tablet or even on your cell phone, you may see these type warnings. Now, these people are so crafty. What they do is they sometimes will even call your phone and say, hi, my name is Cedric Wright, badge number 123456. We detected an issue on your computer and we're here to assist you. Now, what they'll do is they will ask for remote access to your computer in order to alleviate your situation. Please, please do not fall for these type scams, because here again, all they're trying to do is to get your identity. So you cannot fall for that. Now, if by chance you think you may have an issue with your computer, I would highly recommend that you take your computer to someone that you trust, go into a shop. You have places like Best Buy, they house Geek Squad, and they can assist you with your computer. Um, because here again, now most of these pop-ups should not occur if you have a virus protection on your computer and you have a virus protection that's up to date. Many people have virus protections on their electronic devices, but they fail to keep them up to date, particularly if they don't have it toggled to automatically do updates. So these are just things that you want to be careful of if you were to see this type scam. Now let's look at some online safety tips because I know many of us today, with the fact that we're taking advantage of this webinar, you may be online a lot. But let's look at some safety tips to help you with your privacy. The first thing that we want to do is you want to make sure you have strong passwords for all of your accounts. And strong passwords encompass things like maybe the exclamation point or symbols, or maybe instead of doing an S, you would do a dollar sign. All of those are good um, methods of using to develop a strong password. And as you look through this, to see if your password is strong, the first thing it says, does your password contain a word found in the dictionary? If that's yes, you may want to try again. Does your password contain upper and lowercase letters? If that answer is yes, you want to go through your different steps. Does your password contain numbers? If that passes the test, if no, you want to try again. Does your password contain symbols? We talked about those symbols. Does your password contain, does your password, do you use your password for, is that the only one for that particular account? If you have the same one for every account, then you want to do another password. And if you can pass all of these steps, you will have a secure password. Privacy settings. Privacy settings are so important when you are online, when it comes to your tablet, when it comes to your cell phone. You want to make sure that you have your privacy settings set at the optimum capacity in order to protect your identity. And you can kind of see some things that, for example, some people have privacy settings to protect their private information from being used, or some people have privacy settings where if they're on Facebook, no one can request them as being friends. So all of these type things are things that you want to keep in place as it relates to your privacy settings. Free Wi-Fi, we talked about this earlier. You want to be careful about using free Wi-Fi in hotels and etc. And hotels, they're like a buffet for thieves to try to actually lurk on individuals who are using Wi-Fi. We also talked about this earlier. You want to make sure you have a strong virus protection on your computer, on any type of electronic device that you use. And here again, if you have that protection, antivirus protection, you want to make sure that you always keep it up to date. When it comes to your personal information, things that you post, you want to think before you post. You want to make sure that anything that you post via Facebook, Instagram, or whatever social media that you're using, you want to make sure that that information is protected. You just don't want to put anything out there as it relates to your personal identifiable information. When you're online, think before you click. A lot of people don't understand this, but secure websites are noted by HTTPS. If a website that you go to does not have an S by it, that means that that link is not, or that particular site is not secure. Now, let me say this. You do have reputable websites that may not necessarily have that S by it, but be very careful about putting personal identifiable information onto that particular website. But just kind of keep that in mind as you serve. And we talked about this earlier. You don't ever want to give anybody remote access to your computer, even if they tell you that they've detected an issue and they want to assist you in getting your computer fixed or whatever electronic device that you're using. Definitely never give remote access to your electronic devices, because remember, many people, they use their computers to go online to input personal information like maybe their social security number or check their bank account. So all of that stuff is housed or stored on your hard drive on your computer. And if you give someone remote access, unknown to your computer, all of that information can be sought by them. You never want to send money to anyone. You would not believe the number of calls we get from individuals who either do wire transfers or they're doing money orders or they're sending gift cards. All of these things are signs that you could possibly be falling the victim of a scam or identity theft. So just kind of keep those in mind. We talked about this earlier. If you are going to get a credit report, you can always go to www.annualcreditreport.com. This is the reputable site that you can use in order to retrieve your credit report. And the methods that I'm showing you now are the things that we'll talk about in the upcoming slides. These are things that you can use just in case you possibly fall victim to identity theft. And one thing about once you call this number or you access this via online, what it'll do is it will show you what's on the credit report, but it will not contain the score. So just kind of keep that in mind. Everyone on this call, you should have a fraud alert. A fraud alert tells the business, hey, you need to take extra precautionary methods to ensure Cedric Wright is Cedric Wright. And the good thing about a fraud alert is when you call one credit agency, they will take care of notifying the other credit reporting agencies that a fraud alert needs to be put on an account. Now, if you decide to do a fraud alert today, which is June the 7th, you will have to remember a year from now to renew that, because as you see from your bullet points, a fraud alert only lasts for 1 year. Now, if you are the victim of identity theft and you file a police report that is accompanied by an affidavit, that 1 year changes to 7 years. So just kind of keep that in mind. The next thing that is good to have is a security freeze. What a security freeze does, let's say, for example, God forbid, if someone wants to steal my social security number and they try to apply for credit or new lines of credit, a security freeze will prevent that thief from actually taking my social security number and opening up new lines of credit. Now, for a security freeze to be effective, you have to call TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Each of these will actually give you a special PIN number. That PIN number will allow you to thaw out your credit in case you need to buy your child or someone a car. Because if you do not take that special PIN number to thaw it out, as soon as you go to the car dealership, you will be denied. Even if you have a 700 beacon score, you will be denied simply because the security freeze locks it down where no one can actually access your credit. So this is a good thing to have in place for everyone. If you would like to connect with us on Facebook, we have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter account, as well as a YouTube account. All of these are ways that you can connect with us on South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. As I told you earlier, on our Facebook account, we do an excellent job of keeping consumers up to date about what's going on as it relates to consumers, the latest scams, as well as information relative to our webinars. If you would like more for free, we actually give out free publications. If you request publications, we will send you them for free, and we send as many as 50 at a time. We have our Ditch the Pitch, our Identity Theft Prevention Guide, our Credit Report Guide, which was just recently launched, as well as more. Now, I know I covered a lot of information, but does anyone have any questions for me? Any questions or concerns about the information that was presented on tonight? Any questions? Any questions? I'll give you a chance to type your questions in. Any questions? Okay, okay, let's see here. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, but if by chance you think of something after the fact, you are more than welcome to contact me. Here again, my name is Cedric Wright. I am the outreach coordinator with the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs. I've provided you with my email address as well as my office number.
Excuse me, Cedric. I think we do have a couple questions that are sitting in the Q&A.
Okay, all right.
And I will just say one of them is, how safe are password managers?
Password managers are very safe, but I will say this much. Before you engage in one, make sure you read the reviews. Now, I know when it comes to that little fine print, when it to stuff, I know many of us, we don't read them, and I myself can be guilty of that. But you want to make sure you read the fine print, because some password managers, depending upon which one you use, it may have language in there where you may possibly be agreeing for your information to be sold to a third party or be given to a third party. So just make sure you read the reviews as well as the fine print. Are there any other questions? Keep the questions coming, because I love to answer questions.
Hi, Cedric. I see several more questions here for you. Someone asked, is there free antivirus security for personal computers?
Can you read that? Can you say that one more time for me?
Sure. Is there free antivirus security for personal computers?
Yes, you do have some that are actually free for a trial period. However, I would highly recommend that you get a paid version of an antivirus protection. That's very important. And many of a lot of the good ones, you do either have to pay a monthly subscription or a yearly subscription, and then after that, you have to renew it. Now, I'm not saying that the free ones are bad, but you just want to make sure that you get a paid subscription, even if you take advantage of the free subscription. Are there any other questions?
And I'd like to mention to everyone that this presentation is being recorded, and it will be available later on the library's YouTube channel so that you can view it again and look at all of Cedric's slides, because he had an awful lot to share with us. There's a great, wonderful information, but there was a lot of it. So just FYI, you will be able to view this later on our YouTube channel. And Cedric, actually, if you want to stop sharing your screen, you should be able to see the Q&A.
Okay.
These other questions people have.
And Cedric, before you answer one of those questions, one question is, please post the phone number and annual credit report again. I have that it was annualcreditreport.com at 877-322-8228. Does that sound correct, Cedric?
Let me go back, because I don't remember it off the top of my head. Yeah, yes, 877-322-8228. Yes.
Great. I've just put that in the Q&A. Thank you.
Okay. The next question that I see, how can you tell? I can't make out that question. Can you kind of help me with that, Sarah?
It looks to me that the person is asking about, I guess, home title theft. Is that a common occurrence or something that people can protect themselves from?
Well, we don't get a lot of calls about home title theft, although it does happen. And a lot of reasons why it happens, because, for example, when it comes to the title or the deed to your house, that's actually public information. And there have been instances where thieves will actually take that information, have it even notarized, and even refile at the oh God, what's the office? It slips me right now. The office and deeds record or office within the counties. So yes, that can happen. We haven't had any instances here in South Carolina, but I have read instances of that actually occurring. I see where it says someone stole my social security number and used it. Okay, if you're in a situation where your social security number has been stolen, I highly recommend that you use the identity the security freeze, which we talked about earlier, as well as the you want to make sure you use that because that will actually lock your credit reports where they can't take that social security number and put additional things on your credit report. And you also want to put a fraud alert in as well. Those are very important methods to put when you have had your social security number stolen. Where do we go to get free information or booklets? You can actually call us at 1-800-922-1594. Again, that number is 1-800-922-1594. I see a question. Do you have a recommendation on identity protection for the computer? I cannot get, because I work for a state agency, I cannot give a specific recommendation. However, I will say this much. Do your research, read the reviews, and make sure you understand what you're getting into before you actually do it. If you have an Apple computer, do you need to buy spam software? Typically, because of the sophistication of Apple, you typically don't. However, parenthetically, let me say this. You want to be careful about the type websites that you go on, even though Apple has a low rate of actually having viruses. Keep those questions coming. Are there any other questions or concerns? Can I get a new social security number if someone stole my information? Now that would actually be a question for the Social Security Administration. I would definitely channel that to them.
But Cedric, we certainly want to thank you for being here this evening and sharing, again, this wealth of information with us. I know I learned an awful lot, and I'm sure everybody else viewing did. So there's so much to cover, and there's so much that we don't realize we should be doing. And some of them are very easy steps, and but it's just knowing them in the first place will help us so often. Thinking about people throwing out junk mail, such a common thing. Here's another question you have. Safe to keep a password list in the notes on an iPhone.
That's a if your iPhone is, like, for example, with my iPhone, is password protected in addition to I have Face ID. So if your security is sophisticated in such a way that mine is, and not to say that I'm actually exempt from it, but because I know I do have those methods in place, I do feel comfortable keeping passwords on my iPhone like that. And I also have an app that I use called Notes, and I keep my passwords in that. So I even have a password on that. So even if you were to break into my phone, you still couldn't get to my passwords because of the app that I use that is actually password protected as well. So it's like 3 different passwords that you would have to break through. And I'm sure by the time you try to break through 2, you would be really tired trying to get through the 3rd one. If you were to get a hold of my phone. Do I need to worry about Venmo or PayPal? How safe is it when restaurants wants me to pay through an app? I will say this much. We have had a lot of complaints about Cash App. We haven't had any issues about Venmo or PayPal, but you definitely want to be very careful about doing that. Because here again, thieves they do lurk on those PayPal accounts as well as Venmo. But here again, I would highly recommend you using a credit card. And why a credit card over a debit card? A credit card has better identity theft protection versus actual debit card. Because remember, when you use your debit card, that money is immediately gone. But with a credit card, you're actually borrowing someone else's money. So you have better protection when it comes to a credit card versus, maybe using PayPal or Venmo or all of the other ones out there. And I even highly recommend using credit cards when you travel, because we've had a lot of instances where people have had occurrences going out of town and they used their debit card and they were victims of identity theft. And here again, they were not proactive about checking their accounts, and they wait until later. And there is a statute of limitation when it comes to your debit cards versus um, a credit card. So definitely kind of keep that in mind, right? Because a lot of people don't realize that they have better protection with a credit card versus a debit card. As a matter of fact, you have zero liability when it comes to a credit card versus the debit card.
I guess we will wind down our program. But again, Cedric, it was wonderful having you here. Like I said,
Thank you for having me.
so much for sharing all this fantastic information. This session is being recorded and will be available on the library's YouTube channel in the coming weeks so that you can view it again, share it with your friends or family, and view it as much as you like. So on behalf of the library, thank you all for attending tonight's program, and we hope you have a good evening.
Have a good evening.